Hi, my name is Sawad Hussain, and I am the translator of Bushra al-Maqtari's ماذا تركت وراك. In English, What Have You Left Behind, published by Fitzcarraldo Editions. It was originally published in Arabic in 2018 by Riyad al-Rais Publishers in Beirut. Bushra al-Maqtari is a courageous Yemeni activist and writer who still resides in Yemen, and this book is a testament to her courage as she personally collected the accounts of survivors of the brutal Yemeni Civil War, which has claimed over 300,000 civilian lives. And yet, the world has still turned its face away from this conflict. Often in disguise, Bushra would have to travel to different areas in Yemen to collect these accounts, and then she transcribed them, and I have now translated them into English. The account that I'll be reading is entitled Thieves and Rescuers. There's not enough light to make out what's around me. I'm pinned under the rubble, right up against the wall of the room where my daughters and nieces have been sitting. I can hardly breathe. Dust and dirt fill my mouth and nose. I try to get up, but the weight of the rubble prevents me. My husband is also underneath it all, and I see his niece, Ibtihal's head peeking out from under the debris. I hear her cry out, "Auntie, help me, my foot is stuck." I crawl in her direction and try with all my strength to lift the weight of the fridge off of her foot so she can help me save her uncle. Just a bit more, just a bit more. I ask her if it's better now. She sobs, "Auntie, my leg's going to fall off." My voice is swallowed by the darkness. Laughter trickles in from the street, and I hear footsteps stumbling in my direction. Strange men whisper amongst themselves, rummaging around, looking for something. A light fastened to one of their foreheads illuminates the corners of the destroyed room. Thieves. One of them steps on Ibtihal. I yell, "Watch it, the girl under you is still alive." He turns to me, panicked. I beg him to save us. He and the other men start to dig around my husband's body while I do what I can from my corner. The good-hearted thieves of war dig along with me. If it hadn't been for them, no one would have saved us. No one. Not the resistance, nor the civil defense, not our neighbors. If it hadn't been for these thieves of war, we would have all died beneath the rubble. Just like that, after having fled to our family home in Al-Hasib, afraid the militia would shell our area, our joy turned into sadness, our weddings into funerals. My nieces were happy to have the family together again, as Sana, their cousin, would be getting married on Eid. Every day they'd go out to the souk and come back with more clothes to prepare the bride. But the bride, my daughters, and all the other women in the family were murdered. That day, their constant giggling had begun to get on my nerves. The house was packed with 3 families. I convinced my sister Anisa to spend the night at our other sister's house nearby. I remember my niece Sana hugging her mother lovingly and putting her shoes on for her. My daughter Mariam kissed me on my right cheek, and my other daughter Sumaya stroked my back. Mariam asked, "Umma, what's wrong? You're chewing qat." Those were the last words I heard from my daughters before they went into the other room. Then began the nightmare. At first it seemed like a beautiful scene. Laughter, joyful trilling, everyone getting ready for their cousin's wedding, stacks of clothes, family gathering to celebrate. Then suddenly life turned darker than it had ever been. Corpses were piled up from the start of the hospital room to the end of it. I begged the nurses to let me see my girls, but they refused. I only saw them from a distance, unable to say goodbye like other mothers. I wanted to make sure that they weren't coming back. I didn't see them in their shrouds, take them to their final resting place, or kiss them goodbye. I didn't see them at their burials or in their graves. I only saw them from a distance through the crowds in the hospital. Were they really gone? I hung on to the hope that what had happened had just been a nightmare and that my daughters were still alive. I waited for them at our family home. I told myself, Maryam will come soon. Sumaya will come soon. I'll see them soon. Maybe they'd been in the village and would come back to the house, their faces peering out from the hallway, laughing at how scared I was, and give me a kiss just like before. But when the days and months stretched on and when they had been missing for a year, I knew that they were really dead and that I'd never see them again. You don't know how draining life was for us. We were just trying to adjust, living every day in hope the war would end. But when disaster strikes and shatters you, the war broke me. But at what point do you realize that a disaster has taken hold of us all? I don't know, but now as I replay the events of those months, our fleeing and attempts to survive, then the murder of my girls, I know that the fates had planned their deaths. At the start of the war, we were still living in our home in Al-Hasib, my family on the first floor and Anisa's upstairs, our husbands, our brothers. Our home was safe, but we were afraid the petrol station next to us would be hit. At that time, Al-Hasib was under militia control, with snipers stationed on the high buildings, shooting whoever crossed the street. Families fled, fearing for their lives. And when the shelling worsened, we ran to the village, but the girls insisted on us returning to the city. One day, the resistance told us they would liberate Al-Hasib in a matter of days. Don't worry about your houses. The resistance will secure the neighborhood. So we ran from our houses, leaving my gold and my husband's money behind. When we came back to the house after my daughter's murder, the resistance had liberated the area, taking up posts. The locks to our home were broken. The resistance had ransacked everything. My husband's safe, my gold. It was the disaster that broke us. We had lost everything. Our daughters, our nieces, and all we had worked for in this life. When disaster strikes everyone at once, you don't know how to pick yourself up again. My sister's daughter was killed. Hayat, the wife of my husband's brother, was killed, along with their 3 daughters. Their sons' homes were destroyed. I lost my 2 girls and was left only with my son. His wife was injured from this disaster. Her leg had to be amputated. She was pregnant at the time. But do you believe in dreams? Signs we don't pay attention to, but that after a tragedy we remember. Before Maryam was killed, she recounted a dream to me. She'd been walking through a narrow, deserted place and couldn't breathe. Then it opened up and the land became green, like in heaven, she told me. I didn't remember her dream until after she died, but dreams don't tell us everything. They don't open our eyes up to what is coming. On the day it happened, I'd woken up in the morning in a panic. Something was squeezing my chest. I can't remember my dream exactly, but I do remember that something flew in from the direction of the shell, and I screamed until I could no longer breathe. Our hearts are heavy and our spirits broken. Pain is engraved on our faces. Just write what you see. I can't describe my disaster. Just write what you see in our faces. Tahani Muhammad Saif al-Qudsi. At the end of each account, there is further information about the time and the names of those who were murdered, and I'm going to read it because it's important. At 10:30 p.m. on Sunday, 23rd August 2015, the Salih Houthi militia shelled the home of Abdu Dirham al-Qudsi, Tahani's brother-in-law, in the al-Markezi neighborhood of Taiz. Tahani's family had fled there together with the family of her sister, Anisa Muhammad Saif al-Qudsi. Her niece, Sana Muhammad Dirham al-Qudsi, 27 years old, was preparing for her wedding. The bride and both Tahani's daughters were killed. Maryam Muhammad Dirham al-Qudsi, 18 years old, and Sumaya Muhammad Dirham al-Qudsi, 15 years old. The wife of Abdu Dirham al-Qudsi, her name Hayat Qasim Nu'man, 50 years old, was also killed, along with her 3 daughters. Amira Abdu Dirham al-Qudsi, 21 years old, Samira Abdu Dirham al-Qudsi, 22 years old, Samira Abdu Dirham al-Qudsi, 22 years old, and Amal Abdu Darham al-Qudsi, 15 years old. The call center that the Abdu Darham al-Qudsi family owned was destroyed when the militia shelled their home, and goods worth 500,000 Yemeni riyals were burnt. The resistance ransacked the home of Muhammad Darham al-Qudsi in Al-Hasib. Anisa treated her daughter Ummat al-Rahman Jamil Darham al-Qudsi, who had been wounded in the disaster, at her own expense. Still severely wounded, she had been discharged from the Al-Safwa hospital on the pretext that the contract between the hospital and the Saudi King Salman Center had finished. I, meaning Bushra, was able to speak with Samah Jamal Abdul Fareh, Tahani's daughter-in-law, whose leg had been amputated. She was in the room with the girls when the militia shelled the house. She says that she only survived by chance. She had been lying under the rubble when a foot suddenly stepped on her. Her husband had tripped over her. Thank you for listening.